Aw.
Okay, everyone, thanks for joining us. We're going to get started. And I'm Karen Maya de Alman. I'm one of the events coordinators and also a bookseller at the Elliott Bay Book Company. And thank you all for joining us today. There's many friends and also fans and other children's book writers. And it's been really great to see everyone joining us. So we're joining us from Seattle today, from Coast Salish lands, specifically that of the Duwamish people. And I put a land acknowledgement, a longer one in the chat today, and hoping that people will take a moment to find out some information about the Duwamish and also about the ongoing Lushootseed language and cultural project that's happening in our area. But today we have two very special guests, longtime and now former King County Librarian, artist, book enthusiast, and popular children's book author, Toni Yuly. She's joining us today from Bremerton. We wish that she were joining us from our bookstore at Elliott Bay and maybe for the next book. But for today, we're zooming from Bremerton and other places. And she's here to present her delightful new children's picture book, Some Questions About Trees, published by Atheneum Books for young readers. Toni Yuly is also the author of picture book classics Catnap, Early Bird, Night Owl, The Whole Wide World and Me, and Thank You Bees. And they're all favorites of art lovers, families, and especially of the youngest among us, including my grandchildren. So
Yeah.
thank you, bees. So thank you, bees, but also some question about trees and other books were both written and illustrated by Toni, which I think is a little unusual. But she's a very multi-talented person, and so in this case, it's true. So today she'll appear in conversation with her literary agent, Wendi Lulu Gu of Sanford J. Greenburger Associates. And she is a Pacific Northwesterner, though she now lives in New York, but she's also one of us. So it's a pleasure to welcome Wendi as well. And this is our first book together, though we've hosted many of Toni's book launches. So Toni's going to read and talk about her book, and then she and Wendi will have a conversation about how the book came to be. We welcome your questions. Please put them in the chat. And if you've ordered a book when registering, thank you. We'll send these books out at the beginning of this week. We also have more signed copies of Some Questions About Trees at the bookstore. So give us a call, order online, or just stop in. And as always, we thank you for your support. So now, Toni and Wendi, take it away.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank
Thank you so much.
you.
Hi,
Uh,
Wendy.
Hi, Toni. So, just so everyone knows, Toni and I talk on the phone a lot about her books, her contracts, editorial conversations, about all of her projects. But we rarely get to see each other in person. In fact, we haven't ever met in person, Toni, which will change very soon, I hope.
I hope so
Um,
too.
yeah, so this is such a pleasure for us to get to, be face to face and be in conversation about the book with all of you. I see some familiar names in the chat, and coming from all over the country, and we just really appreciate you joining us. Again, if you have any questions, just leave them in the chat, and we'll save hopefully at least 15 minutes to answer your questions. But I have some questions for Toni that I actually haven't had the opportunity to ask her directly before. But today, I think, Toni, we should start with a reading of the book. How does that sound?
That sounds good, Wendy. Yep, I think that's a good idea. Here it is. Here it is. Can you see it pretty good?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good. Well, there's the cover and there's the back.
Oh, it's so good.
And then if you take the cover off slowly, yay, then you get to see that little tea party, tree tea party, and then on the back.
So cute.
Yay. So yeah, okay, here's some questions about trees for Wendi G and all the trees.
That was such a surprise to me.
Aw. Where do trees live? On the earth? Am I holding it okay?
Maybe raise it up a little higher.
Up a little higher like this?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. Should I start over? I'll start over. Where do trees live? On the earth? Or in the sky? Are some trees shy? Are some trees full of friends? What part is the heart of a tree? Is fall when trees throw parties with leaves? Is that why trees are naked in winter? Who tells the trees when spring is here? Is it the ducks? I don't know. Who do fruit trees make fruit for? Do tiny trees dream of being big? Do the tallest trees get lonely? Are trees afraid of the dark? Or does the moon keep them company? Does my favorite tree remember me? When I plant a tree, are we family? Hmm? That's it, yay. Uh, thanks, Wendy.
Every um, this is our first time doing a reading to an audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't see the audience, and it feels weird, but it was fun to read it.
Yeah, it was fun for you to actually, for me to hear you read it for the first time, because as I said, when we've been dealing with the material of the book, it's all been mostly over email. But every time I flipped through this book, I find things that I didn't see before, which is extraordinary because it is a very short book, compared to, let's say, a novel.
Yeah.
And and I think you leave so many just delightful discoveries for adults and children, from the big bear eating the fruit to the little bear in the child's bed. I think
Oh, I forgot about there's two bears. Yeah,
yeah.
that's cool. I like that, Wendy. I'm glad
Yeah.
you noticed it. Yeah.
I feel like every page is this call and response, and you somehow are able to speak to the inner child in the most inspiring, beautiful way. And I just love this book so much. And I want to hear, you speak a little bit more about what inspired this book. I think the audience would be curious as well.
Yeah, sure. I kind of always knew I wanted to make a book that had something to do with trees.
Mhm.
You know, I just always kind of knew that. And I'd played around with different things and different ideas for a book, you know, picture book. But I think it wasn't until about, I don't know, 15 years ago at least, when I was at a library book sale and I found a copy, an original copy of this book. It has the real Caldecott sticker and everything. And for people that don't know, this book, A Tree is Nice, it's also a book that is just super simple. It's like, it's about trees, but it's also about our relationship with trees. You know, it goes through these very simple, everyday, you know, things that we enjoy about trees, you know, that, and when I saw this book, it was like a thunderbolt, you know, I just like, okay, you know, that was the first real inspiration, I think, for this book that I wrote. And then, you know, I kept fooling around. And I think when I had met you, I had a couple drafts of some other trees. I don't think I shared them at the time, but one was If I Were a Tree. And it was not really similar, but it was starting to ask questions. It was a format of kind of like wondering and questioning a relationship with the tree. And then I was writing more and more and more. And I was in another thrift store and I found another book that like hit me like a complete lightning bolt. And that was Pablo Neruda's Book of Questions. And I don't know if people watching know that book, but it's a book of questions. He's a famous poet, obviously, and I think it's his last book he ever made, and it's just all question format, and that kind of just like was the huge inspiration I needed to just go forward and and make this one. Yeah, so.
I highly recommend that everyone check Neruda's book out. I actually didn't know anything about it until Toni, there it is.
There's a copy, yeah.
Until Toni brought it to my attention, and I think you know, in our discussion about in our initial discussion about the book, the inclusion of Neruda's wisdom via this formatting was what really hooked me into the belief that this has to be Toni Yuly's next book. And you know, I represent a lot of picture books now, and I had never and still haven't ever represented a project that is only questions. And you know, I think it's just one of the most unique and beautiful books that I'll have the privilege of representing. And yeah, and so my next question is, I want to, you know, I as an agent, I kind of am behind the scenes with the book publishing process, the book making process. Some agents, we are heuristic enough to call ourselves book midwives. But I know a lot of, you know, how this book came into being, but I kind of want all of you to hear from Toni as well, you know, how this book was birthed, and speak to some of the process. And before Toni starts speaking, I just want to speak to how Toni landed in my inbox, which was a very magical story. And the person who is responsible for this is actually, I think, in the audience today, because I just saw a chat from her. But one day on September 4th, 2019, the incredible Karina Lukin ended up slid into my DMs and asked if I was willing to take a look at the work of her dear friend, Toni Yuly. And Karina said that, I have the initial DMs pulled up now, but she said that Toni is the real deal. She has so much heart, and she is so wonderful with small children. She said that, Karina said that, I absolutely love her book, The Whole Wide World in Me, which I then immediately took a look at and fell in love with. and Karina also said that her work is a combination of serene and calm while also being playful, which is a magical combination. And I was, I was immediately interested. Some funny backstory is that when I first started out as an agent, I was just starting my career. I reached out to Karina and I offered representation. And of course, she went with another much more established agent. And I think that makes all the sense in the world that Karina did that. But what I find so magical is, with the book industry, you are connected inevitably with so many brilliant people, and I'm so grateful that I put myself out there and offered representation to Karina back in the day because she brought me Toni Yuly. Yeah, and then I remember going to Toni's website and immediately seeing this like incredible image of this giraffe, which is actually the color of Toni's sweater right now. And just thinking, how is it that this animal, which I think was from torn tissue paper,
Yeah.
how is this animal so expressive? And I was immediately intrigued about what other book projects she had coming up. And Toni, I think you actually have been looking at some of our original correspondence. But my first memory of you sharing your book projects with me was sending me the text of this project, which didn't even have a title at that point, but it was a list of questions about trees. And my memory of this whole editorial process was that we talked about your intentions for the book, what you wanted the heart of the book to speak to, and we just kind of like pinged drafts back and forth until you started on the art. But I don't know, is that true to your memory as well?
Yeah, that is. Thanks for all that wonderful story, Wendi. That was really special. I love it. Yeah, definitely. I mean, when we started work on this project, I was just like floored and flabbergasted at the care and the time and the effort and the, just the heart that you put into this. Because we must have emailed for weeks and weeks, if not months, back and forth as I would send you something, you would send me something. You helped me to, I just remember you helped me to dig so much deeper. The book never could have become what it was without your help. I'd never had that experience before. And I just remember the very first, I was just expecting you to be like, yeah, whatever, or this is, I don't, get this or whatever, but it was like the opposite. And I just have to read you, like, this was the first kind of main question you wrote to me. And I was like floored. So you wrote, my main question to you, Toni Yuly, is what do you like about trees? What is it about them that make you want to meditate on these questions? Or why do you have questions for trees in the first place? And that was just like one Wendi Gu question. I mean, I could go on and on and on. She had me write an artist statement for this book. I mean, I have like a book this big for our little tree book. And really, Wendi, I mean, that's, the book I dedicated to you because you're such a big part of this book. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that, Toni. I think it takes two to tango, and I think I think as you are I think you are an artist that, from my point of view, you create art around something that interests you, and sometimes and the art that you create is visually stunning. And it is sort of, sometimes I see it as my job as an agent to to figure out what the pitch material is. So
Yeah.
maybe this makes it sound like unromantic and too business-like, but I asked you those questions in huge part because I was genuinely curious. I wanted to hear more about this sort of, it felt like a cosmic connection that you had. And I remember you described to me where you lived, and then you were talking about how you needed to go on these long walks to kind of ground yourself to help the artistic process flow better. And I just remember thinking, this person is much more one with the universe than I am, and I want that. And I want that. And I wanted to see that reflected on the page as well. I think you took the questions about you took my questions about your questions, and you took this project to a whole different level and splattered your heart and your wisdom all over the page in this stunning way that is this book now. I mean,
Thank you.
I am not editorially involved as deeply with every single project as some projects I am more editorial than others. Some projects are, they come to me and I feel like, oh, I could just send this right off to the editor. But with this project, it inspired such inquiry in me. And so I wanted to ask you more questions. But I think that process is what made last Tuesday such a happy day for me personally, because I felt like this book answered my own questions about the world and spoke to my own inner child, because it was a process that we worked on together so intimately.
Oh, I love that, Wendi. Thank you. Thanks. It was definitely special. I have such great memories of it, and memories.
Yeah.
Thank you. It makes me cry.
But yeah, I mean, it was every book is its own journey, but this one was just like so much fun. And I also I'm happy to speak about the publication process as well a little bit, which I am more than happy to brag about. But a part of my job beyond editorial work is to kind of talk to my creator clients about what kinds of publishing houses they want to work with, what kinds of editors they want to work with, and Toni, who already works, knows the industry quite intimately, had some ideas about which editors, which imprints, and it was also immediate simpatico about the types of houses that we wanted to go to. And one among those houses was Atheneum, which is Atheneum Books for Young Readers, which is an imprint of Simon & Schuster, and they publish books that I think are just literary, beautiful. They tend to be award-winning. It's that kind of book, which is not necessarily like about like pirates and unicorns. I mean, I think they do publish books about those things, but they're less based around the holidays, like less commercial in that way. And we went to their picture book editorial director, Reka Simonson, there, and we decided to submit to her. And at that point, a week or two into the submission, we had already been fielding a fair amount of interest from other publishers, but we could tell that Reka's interest was really strong from the very beginning. And so she swooped in and made an offer that took the book off the table with the other editors. And now Toni has 2 books with Atheneum. One of them, coming out, one day, but we'll focus on the books, on some questions about trees today. But that was was some of the, behind the scenes like publishing story of this book. And now, now the book is out in the world, and it's for you guys as well. So yeah, I think in every book has a different path, but another thing that's so interesting about getting to work on many books by different creators is that every single illustrator has their own medium and their own style. And in this book, there are many different textures. So between like the bark of the winter trees to the leaves in the fall to the line arts in the child's hair. I think that's what part of what makes this book such a joy to look at, Toni. So I'm wondering, what was your medium? What were the mediums for this book, and what did you use to draw the various pieces of this book?
Yeah. Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, I did use a lot of different things. Like you say, so, just pencil. Her dress was chalk pastel. So this is chalk pastel. But that her dress is the only area where there's chalk pastel. I kind of wanted her to just be special and just super simple. So just chalk pastel and pencil for her. And then like you could see these leaves, back to a style I love, torn tissue paper. That's torn tissue paper. Oops, I was going to show you the, sorry, the other torn tissue paper that stands out is the torn tissue and a little chalk pastel in there, and some other, I think this is pastel as well. But let's see, and then more torn tissue paper here with this big tree. And then a lot of the rest of the book is, I don't know, just cut paper. Like this tree is done all in cut paper. And then some textures added in, the house, the clouds. Well, the clouds are collaged, but the house, and then I like the water tank. She climbs up to see the tallest tree. That's just felt pen. So I used a little bit of everything. It's just kind of a hodgepodge, but trying to keep it super, super integrated and simple. And I think it worked. And and then I collage everything on the computer. I'll do elements and scenes off the computer. Of course, everything I do by hand, and then scan it and collage it, the final on the computer. Yeah.
Wow. So there's the tactile elements, and then there's the technology pieces as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. How long would it take for you to, for me, it all looks effortless. The whole book, just all of the expressions, all of the design, even the layering, like all of it just looks like it's very obvious, and it was meant to happen that way. But I know from being a little bit more behind the scenes that some pieces took longer than others.
Yeah.
One piece that I find to be that looks totally effortless is the girl's facial expressions and her looks of wonder. And I'm wondering, how long did it take for you to get those expressions right?
Yeah, it's funny because, making a book is such a weird, wacky, crazy experience where you first might get this idea and sketch, doodle, and you love it. And then say you get the dummy, say you sell the book, and then there's a gap, and maybe you have other projects going. So a lot of times author illustrators, I think like me, are called to conjure it. We have to conjure this thing that's fresh and spontaneous, kind of at will. And that is a struggle sometimes, I think, for me. but this girl definitely kind of came out of nowhere and just kind of appeared, and it was real fresh right from the beginning for me, and like nothing I'd ever done. And Reka Simonson, my wonderful editor, that was one of the things that she especially loved about about the dummy, was, well, I think she liked it all, but she expressed to me that the artwork was like, it's done. I mean, it was so weird when we started working. I had to do a lot of work, and of course there was a lot of changes, but at least 2 or 3 of the spreads did not change from the dummy. And I just love that about her, that this editor could look at a dummy, you know, which is supposed to be rough and raw, and say, no, I love it. Don't change it. You know, that was so like, never had that experience before. And she's, you know, I think I really love her for that. You know, oftentimes you have to change everything, or change happens. It seems like sometimes like, why, or, you know, but she's great. And that was a unique experience for this book, is that some of the freshness just stayed, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's very important for I'm not by trade an editor, right? But it's very important to find that editor with that very strong vision in the very beginning, which is why I think we felt strongly about accepting her offer too. I remember when she wrote me back pretty immediately after we had submitted it, and she pulled out the last one of the last 2-page spreads of the book, which is in the final book itself. You may have tweaked some of the body language. I'm actually not sure if you, I think you did a little bit, but the last sort of like illustration spot of the little girl playing on the tree, which also, you know, is on the case cover. Yeah, that exactly.
Yeah, she loved it. She loved that. Yeah.
Yeah, that hasn't changed much, right? Since our original.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know.
And it's, you know, it was so important to the heart of the book that it made it onto the case, onto the front and the back of the case, which is also rare and amazing. And I think another one of the spreads that made it in from our initial submission was the Willowy Tree. It's not a willow tree.
Yes, I patterned it after my Weeping Katsura tree. This one, is pretty much as is. I mean, I had to tweak the girl and stuff a little, but the tree was there in the dummy. And yeah, there's a couple others too, but there was one that significantly changed. I mean, completely. I don't know if you remember, Wendy, this spread, when I first showed it to you, it was like completely different. It was really weird. You know, this was the one spread, and I love this spread so much now, but it was like this, I can't even describe it. It was really weird. It was really, really weird. And
I'm so weird. Yeah, another funny thing about this publishing journey that Toni and I were just reminiscing on was I thought that those illustration samples that you had just seen, minus the one of the bear, were so uniquely beautiful that I felt strongly that I could just submit the text with those illustration samples, and that was it. But Toni, who is very smart, said, no, I think we need to do this whole dummy. And so Toni, spent time pulling the full dummy together. And I think that's what also helped get all of that really fast attention as well. So, you know, I think I always listen to my clients. I want to hear their feedback on the submission, on not just the work, but the editorial, but the submission process. And so just more reasons as to why this team between me and Toni is such Right.
Well, yeah, it's true. We're a good team. And you know, now that you're talking about all this and reminiscing it, I have to give a shout out to Wendi Lulu, my friend, who's probably here. I know she is. And she's one of the people that I will shoot things to and I will bounce things off of, because she's so brilliant, and her editorial mind, you know, I can toss it in the trash, which she says to me if I want, and I do sometimes. But I remember with this one, she really encouraged me. She was kind of, now that I remember it, she was just like, oh man, keep going with this, keep going, you're getting something really great here. So keep going. And I was thinking at that point, when we were talking, I was like, well, maybe I want to do a little more. Yeah. So thanks, Wendi.
Yes, thank you,
Wendi Womman. Another Wendi. Oh my God, of course.
She's Wendi with a Y though, right?
Yeah, I know. It's true.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a couple more questions, and I think we have some more time before we
okay.
Questions. But I think you, like I said earlier, Toni, you are very inspired by the world around you, we wanted to do this event with Elliott Bay Books because it's so close to your hometown, and it is so important to the land of the Seattle area. So I want to ask, do you have? I mean, this is a very cute question, I know, but do you have a favorite tree near your home, or what are your favorite trees to see around the Pacific Northwest in Seattle?
Well, growing up in the Pacific Northwest, I was lucky enough to grow up on an island and surrounded by trees and water. But most of the trees when I was little that I was surrounded by were pine trees and evergreen trees, fir trees, cedar trees. So those were just like absorbed, those were just like part of me, like this is my extended family. They were my favorite trees because that's what I mostly saw. I mean, it was just like hugely everywhere. And when I was growing up, but I've been living here in Bremerton for about 13 years, and it's the first place where I've had a real yard. And I planted all my favorite trees. I have Katsu, my weeping Katsura tree, which that beautiful, that tree is patterned after. It just got its leaves this week. I have a ginkgo tree, which I planted from a nut back in the apartment when my son was born, and it's now 30 feet tall. It's in my yard. I have a persimmon tree in the back that's also giant and gives me tons of persimmons, and it was planted from a stick that I kept trugging. I brought it from wherever we lived. I would just keep it in a pot, but here it got to go in the ground. And there's an umbrella pine tree that I don't know if you know what an umbrella pine tree is, but it's an ancient tree. It's prehistoric, so its needles are really big, and it has fewer needles than most pine trees, and they kind of look like an umbrella shape. It's so cool, but I tell it every day, you have got to give me a pine cone because it's so ancient that it takes like, I think it lives for like hundreds and hundreds of years, and it takes like 20 years to make a pine cone, and I've only had it like 13 years. So
wow.
Yeah. So those are just some of my favorite trees. And Seattle, of course, is full of like really cool trees that I visit when I'm there. Yeah.
I have the great privilege of having received 3 persimmons from your persimmon tree before. You wrapped them in these beautiful like egg cartons and then
right.
dented tissue paper. It was one of the most aesthetically pleasing and delicious gifts I have ever. Highly recommend all of you guys becoming very good friends with Toni, so she sends you these persimmons. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean,
my friend Wendi Womman. I was going to say my friend Wendi Womman I mentioned before. She actually planted a persimmon tree from my persimmon tree, a little starter. Yeah, so I could send you a starter.
I live in Brooklyn though, and I have no yard situation. So
maybe not then.
I'll just have to enjoy yours from my USPS.
I'll just keep sending you fruit.
Yeah, and then I think we have time for one more question from me, which is,
Okay.
do you have any questions about trees that didn't make it into the book?
Yeah. Yes, I love that question, Wendy, because I have so many questions that did not make it into the book.
Cool.
I mean, yeah, like every day. I mean, and I would send you these, like, whenever I thought of it, I would just like send you, oh, how about these? How about these? And some of them were okay. Well, where are they? I kept them, sorry, I kept a printout because some of them were pretty good. Sorry, so let me find, where the heck are they? Here they are. Here's some that I liked. I underlined, but I have like scads of them. There's just like so many. Do snowflakes return as blossoms in spring? Do trees have a favorite bird song? Do trees ever feel like sitting? Do city trees dream of the country? What do trees hide in their roots? Okay, now we're getting back into the kind of, can a tree fall in love? But it was such a great experience it was like part of my daily ritual to just write questions about trees. And I think writing questions and just questioning in general is a really great, healthy way to process. And as a kid, I was always shy and nervous and didn't want to ask questions in class, but I ask a lot of questions now.
I love those questions so much. Just hearing you read them brings me back to the editorial process from 2 years ago. But I agree with you. I mean, the process of inquiry is in and of itself meditative, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that each question you just listed, it was essentially like a deep breath for my brain, I think, because I just there's no answer to, there's no quantitative answer to these questions you're asking, which is what makes the book so beautiful too. It's what we're forced to kind of sit and meditate on this unanswerable question, which is what has made this whole book experience such a pleasure.
Thanks, Wendy.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I think thank you for sharing those, Toni. Those were very beautiful. I would love to open up the floor to questions. So Karen, I'm calling you to help me pick the questions to ask.
Sure. First of all, that was just so wonderful. And I have to say that Wendy actually asked specifically about the persimmon tree, as did several other people in the chat, and other people were proclaiming their love for the persimmon tree, its fruit, this book, your work, and it's just really wonderful. And I'll share all that text with you, the chat text with you afterwards. So don't worry about not seeing it now.
Thanks, Karen.
So one question I thought was interesting comes from Elizabeth Stanton, who asks, does the little girl in the book have a name?
Hi, Bethy. No, she does not. I think with this girl, I try to make her like every girl. It's hard, with kids, you can't really make an iconic every kid, right? It's just almost impossible, but I tried with this one. But you can give her a name, Bethy, if you want.
You can write it in the chat.
Anyone can give her a name. Maybe that's a good thing. She doesn't actually have a name. You can like put your own self onto her.
Yeah, because you can really project yourself into that character, I think.
Yeah.
And Lala asks if she's friends with Kokoro.
She's totally friends with Kokoro. Oh yeah, best friends. They're best friends.
Melody Sky Eisler wants to know, how did your time in Japan influence your art?
Hi, Melody. That's such a great question, because my time in Japan like slammed me, into another dimension of insanely wonderfulness. I mean, I was just 17, but I think I was not prepared for the, the incredible aesthetic that I lived through in that year. And, it's still with me. Yeah. That's a great question because it was a huge part of who I am.
So you went when you were 17. So what was
I,
the impetus? How'd
I,
you get there?
I was an exchange student. I graduated from high school when I was 17, and then I got the opportunity to go there for a year and live with families and,
Mhm.
study culture and travel. It was just so great.
Where did you live in
I lived
Japan?
mostly in Sendai in
Oh, way in the north.
northern
Yeah.
Japan, but I traveled to
Yeah.
Hokkaido. I got down to Kyoto, and I didn't get to the southern islands, but I traveled a lot on the main island of Honshu.
Did you ever go back?
No, I want to.
Someday.
I want to. Yeah,
Someday.
I will. I'll go back
Mhm.
on a tree trip. Uh, Yeah.
Yeah. I'm betting that your books would be very popular there too, as well. Just your aesthetic and your connection to nature. I think people would really resonate to that.
I hope so. I hope so. This book
Yeah.
is actually sold the rights to Thailand. It'll be in
Mhm.
Thai, but it's, come on, Japan. Let's have that.
Okay, Wendi.
Yeah.
um, uh, and Elizabeth Stan wants to know who are some of your favorite fine artists?
Whoa, that's too hard because I have like too many. I
Or
have a
some of them.
I have a
Yeah.
fine art background.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Do they tend to be painters or sculptors or
Okay,
photographers or everything?
that's why I'm
Hmm.
confused because like when I was in the fine art department at the University of Washington and
Hmm.
I got to study with Jacob Lawrence, and that's a whole nother book. I'm working on like a little
Wow.
graphic novel about that,
Oh my gosh,
but
that would be wonderful.
but honestly, I felt more like a designer. I mean, I felt like, and in fact, it was Jacob Lawrence that taught me that just because you're in the painting department and just because, you're a quote painter, you can do all these things like he did. I mean, he was a designer, he was a painter, he was an illustrator. He was he made murals, he did everything. And he taught me that. He's the guy who taught me that I don't have to be limited um, just by a painting. And so I've always kind of seen myself since then as that way. And he was so the role model for that. He was, yeah.
He illustrated Hiroshima. Yes. When that was in the New Yorker, he picked that as what he wanted to the John Hersey book. He wanted to illustrate that book, and that's where the photo series came from. I mean, the painting series came from. I've seen it in photographs mostly, but I think it's been here as well. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, he was incredible. He taught me two really big things, and that was one of them.
Oh.
Do you want to know what the other one is? I'll say real fast. He taught me that you can work anywhere. He had a tiny studio on campus, and I lived in apartments for years and worked in a tiny space. And he drilled it into my head that you don't need a big space. You don't need, you can work anywhere. Oh yeah.
Diane Davis would like to know, do you make the books in other languages? How does that work?
Wendi can answer that one, I think, better, how that works.
Sure. Yeah. So we sometimes we work with the publisher to license those translation rights abroad. So with Toni's books, with her most recent with books that have already been published, the publisher owns those translation rights, and the publisher's foreign rights team will speak to different publishers from all over the world and license those books to those territories. And yeah, we recently just learned that some questions about trees will be licensed in Thailand, which is amazing. I know that Toni's other books have been published in Asia and Europe in different languages, but it is publishing. The publishing industry has an entire sector called the like with foreign rights that that every year at Bologna Book Fair, which is going on like right now or just ended, you know, where you sell the rights abroad, and it's an incredible experience. I mean, if any of you ever have the opportunity to go to Bologna Book Fair, just as children's,
I want to go.
yeah, Tony, we should go. I've been once, but it was extraordinary to just walk through the floor. Like it's, you know, it's a huge sort of convention hall, but just to walk through this convention hall and see books from every different country. And I will say my favorite books were from Japan. there's so many people. Yeah.
I was wondering too, there's quite an interesting community of artists and children's book writers and illustrators in the Seattle area. And we talked about Wendi, whose work is wonderful, and also Julie Pashkus is also here. Now, and there are probably others as well. Can you talk a little bit about that experience of being part of that community?
Oh my God, yeah. It's like it's like, you know, I'm old, right? And I broke into this business as an older person. It's like, and I would not have been able to do it without the people in this community. I would have still been now to this day, like begging and clawing my way through, you know, who knows what, you know, the community here fast-tracked me, you know, just through their support, and to this day still supporting me. And I'm so grateful. I'm so lucky. And yeah, it's an incredibly rich community here. And I feel like I know a few of them, but I'm also lucky that I know the ones I do. And yeah, I don't know, I could go on and on about that. There's, and you know, there's a group of us that kind of we're all women, I guess. There's lots of good guys here too, but the women, we have a small group of hardcore women where we try to get together as a group at least once a year, and you know, just be with each other. And besides that though, I have my friends that I've met that I talk to all the time. But yeah, I mean, breaking in, I think that's another long story, Karen, but
yeah.
just so you know, it's the people, right? I mean, the people are the magic. The people are what make things happen, and I couldn't have done anything without this community.
Do you have advice for people that are aspiring children's writers? Maybe they're artists and they think, "Ooh, I'd like to do something with children's books." What advice would you give people?
Yeah, people do ask me a lot or contact me about that. It's hard because I think that I like to be a realist for them. I like to tell people that it's a really tough business. It's really hard to make a go of it, but that if you don't give up, it's just like the creative process in general. Whenever you're creating something, I think a lot of people give up halfway through, or you know, at some point it's too hard. I mean, you're feeling like crap. You're feeling so bad. And I think in the, you know, making your way as an author or illustrator, you're going to have a lot of struggles too. So I just tell people, if it's something you really want to do, don't give up, and get to know as many people as you can in the business that will encourage you, that could help you. SCBWI and different other organizations are, you know, amazing doors in as well. But the people, you need people to support you, and you know, it's hard to go on your own. Yeah.
So the SCBWI.
Yeah.
So it's the Society of Children's
Books Writers and Illustrators. Yeah.
And there is a local chapter, and you can find that online. I'll try to put it in the chat at the end, but yeah, that's a great resource. And also there's so many people that come into the bookstore that talk to us about, you know, I'd like to write a children's book, or I have self-published a children's book in some ways, who maybe don't realize how much work it is.
Yeah.
And your book is so beautiful and so simple, and yet so much work went into it. And so much, it was so much of a collaboration too with Wendi, this book.
Mhm.
And I think that is, I'm going to encourage people to watch this video, because that really kind of gives you an idea of how it's serious business. It's a skill, and it's a creative process, but it's just not, it's not easy. Even
It's
though there's not a lot of words, they're very well chosen,
Thank
right?
you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Karen. And you're right, it's not easy, but it's so worth it too. I mean, I tell
Mhm.
people, I mean, it's like my friends that I'm in contact with all the time, that we're going through a creative
Mhm.
process and we're struggling and we're freaking out and we're crying and we're pulling our hair out. We know, once you do it a couple times, you get more confidence that you can do it. You're gonna get
Mhm.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is probably a good time for the last question. This is also from Wendi Lulu. What's next? What's next for you? And you can
Ah,
both answer that if you'd like.
well, what's next is I'm working on my second book with Reka Simonson, which is
Mhm.
just an incredible joy, but also insanely difficult because of the process. But yeah, it's my second book with her, and I'm really excited. It. I don't know how much I can tell about it, Wendi. I don't know.
I think you can, I
Yeah,
will,
maybe not.
I'm going, well, it's announced, so I feel like we can share some pieces of it, but it is, thematically, I would say it's going to be very clear that it is a sister to some questions about trees.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
It also slows you down. It slows one down. I think there are lots of deep breaths in this book. And there's also a main character that is a tree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
I think we can say that much. We can
that's
probably say,
wonderful.
like,
That
Yeah,
sounds great. No, I love that. Thanks, Wendi. That's
yeah.
perfect. That's perfect.
And we're not forgetting about this Jacob Lawrence related graphic novel
I think
too.
that came from you, Karen, too. I think in one of our emails, I asked you once, what book do you want to see, Karen? And you said
Mhm,
something like, why don't you write about your experience with, but
mhm. I
yeah,
think people understand him as an artist, but not so much
teacher,
as a teacher
teacher and
and a
mentor.
mentor. I
Oh
mean, people know
yeah.
about Barbara Earl Thomas, but
Yeah,
there's so many people that he mentored that went on to do wonderful things.
that's
And
true.
I
Yeah.
think that would be something that he would have really had a lot of joy in seeing,
Yeah,
is something
you're
like
right.
that.
You're right.
So
You're right.
yeah.
You're right. Well, that'll
Yeah.
inspire me someday. Next project.
Yeah, and if you haven't, oh, and Elizabeth Stanton is saying she loves Barbara Earl Thomas. If you have not seen her exhibit, it's still at her latest exhibit is still at the Henry, and it's a collaboration. Also, it's wonderful. It's going to be here for just a little while longer. So please see that. And I think this is a good place to end our talk today. So again, the author is Toni Yuly, whose book, Some Questions About Trees, has just been published. We have signed copies at the Elliott Bay Book Company. Also, thank you to Wendi Lulu Gu, Toni's literary agent. We look for many, many more books from you as well. And thank you to all of the people who joined us today: children, teachers, artists, authors, children's book lovers. We all appreciate your support and hope to see you at the bookstore again soon. We're open until 9 tonight. We're open every day for in-store browsing. We'll be starting with a few in-store events starting in April, mostly virtual, and hoping to see you soon. So
Yay.
take care
Thanks.
and good afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you, Toni, for
Thank you.
writing
Thanks.
such a beautiful book.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming. Thanks, Wendi.